Oh dear. Oh noes. Hold on. We have to fix this. We don't have a sploosh. Sploosh! Much better. Now we're back. Can't tell I was shooting video yesterday, can you? Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands and brain Justin, because he's buried under ReaperCon and Kickstarter and oh my, lions and tigers and bears. I just pictured Justin, like, with a bear, a lion, and a tiger sitting on him. I don't think I wanted to go there, but anyway, hi guys, how's it going? How was your Wednesday? Let's see here. I need to expand my window. I need to expand you. Hey, Estrogene. I see that resub. Sneaky little resub. 7 months. Nice. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, sploosh. Hey, D. Clearman. Poning you all with 25 months. I'm sure there are other people who have been here for 25 months, but dang. Like, that's dedication. D. Clearman has no problem with commitment. Super awesome, thanks. Oh, bummer. I'm sorry your Wednesday sucks a little bit. Hello, Bob and Julie. Pop down there to our girl. Our girl needs to get that. There we go. It's funny how throwing white into the frame can make a model look better or worse. So let's see. What do we want to do today, guys? What are you in the mood for? Like, we keep working on the hair. The hair needs help. We need to do that. We need to kind of figure out, maybe block in some more of our green. I think the scabbard's going to be dark green. I think we're looking at that. I'm still thinking about accent colors on her. I'm talking about a fanboy. He's the teacher's pet. Is that what you're saying? All right, let's see here. I wish. I miss rain. Like, I don't miss rain for days like we've been having it in Texas lately. Like, the last couple of years in Texas, it seems like we've had this weird rainy season where it's just rain, and the backyard was always a lake. And I don't like that, but I do like rain every once in a while. And here, rain is like, we're in the total no rain zone. No fly zone, no rain zone. Aww. New job. Well, hopefully the new job is, like, you know, more awesome and better paying and, like, lets you do eventually what you want to do, right, D. Clearman? Like, there's a payoff to a new job, one hopes. Unless it's just having a job. Good. Fantastic. Well, congrats then. Congrats on the new job. Been raining for 6 days. Yeah, it gets a bit old for me at that point in Aura, but I could do a couple of rainy days in a row and be very, very happy. I do love rain. Yes. Yeah. My boyfriend grew up in Seattle, so he gets it, Trek Nerd. We had a very dry year this year, Jabberwock, where we didn't get much rain even in the winter. And we've had almost nothing this spring. So everybody's scared of the fire season this summer. Yeah, that's when I moved to Texas. Durham was in April, and so I was used to the spring thunderstorms. But in the last couple of years, it's been a little bit different. Like, it's seriously... I don't know. I had not previously remembered this much rain this many days in a row. It's like that one year at ReaperCon where it was like 7 days of rain and everything was flooding. And then it cleared up for ReaperCon for like 2 days, and then it was torrential again for 5 days after. And that's just weird. Like, that's not what I remember when I moved to this state, right? So it's just weird. All right, let's see. Let's get some green. What was I using? Looking. Gonna grab my greens. Grab the greens. I think we're using Dungeon Slime. A little bit of Wilderness. Where's my Wilderness green? There's my Wilderness green. Gotta look at my model and see. Yeah, I think I was using maybe... Yeah, probably some Dungeon Slime with some Wilderness mixed in for the hair and then white. Bringing it up with the white. That's what it looks like to me. Sure, let's get her hair where we want it. Let's do that. Texas was pretty consistent, and the South Bay seemed very consistent, except for the amount of rain varies, but we don't get much of it. It doesn't vary. It was rainier when I first moved here than it was this winter. All right. Gonna get some pure white out because we want to bring our hair up that high. Yeah, exactly, right, Durham? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be like. I mean, we had bad fires last year, but it's going to be worse. And it's partially climate and partially forest management issues. I'm going to do 3 drops of Dungeon Slime and 1 drop of Wilderness and see if that gets me close to where I had it on the hair. We don't have any direct fire danger here in Mountain View because we're down in the valley, but we definitely get the smoke. It's hard to walk and breathe at that point. Bad air. Wish there was something they could do about it, but it is the weather. We are at the mercy of it somewhat. All right, I'm going to mix up that. Yeah, I think that's about what I was dealing with. I was doing 3 drops of Dungeon Slime, 1 drop of Wilderness, and then the pure white. And then I'll do a little bit. Yeah, it is. We had like nothing this winter. No, just no water. I'm sure there are parts of the state that got water, but not here in the South Bay. All right, so I'm thinning my paint, my white about 2 to 1, thinning the other one about 2 to 1, my usual standard thing to do. And then I'm going to grab some Wilderness, and I'm going to do a reverse of what I did here. I'm going to do 3 drops of Wilderness, 1 drop of Dungeon. I might up that to 2 drops of Dungeon. Yeah, maybe I will. I'll just do 2 to 2, actually. So just a little bit more Wilderness, because you want some darker shadows in the hair, but because the hair is white, you don't want very dark shadows in the hair. Not ever. Yeah. Pretty much. Well, I mean, that site started because, you know, there's some truth in it. Yeah, and whenever you switch holders, you're gonna feel a little bit weird because you have to adjust how you hold it, crows. I mean, I'm used to using anything. For me, it's just like, can I get it in the frame? You know, can I hold it comfortably in frame? But I mean, it's the same. Because I balance my hands on each other like this, no matter what I'm holding. Like if I was holding little pirate girl, I'm still balancing my hands on each other. So I have to get a little closer here because my hand has a very small thing to hold, but I'll compensate for that. So, I mean, it's good to switch it up every once in a while, but, I mean, it's comfortable to hold. I find that it's maybe a little wobbly for my taste. It's got a slightly weighted bottom, but, I don't know. I like my blocks, but they're not as comfortable to hold, so I think my favoriteest thing is probably just the, hollow things filled with pennies. The pill bottles and, Red Bull container that I have used in the past. I don't know. I mean, it's just something to stick a mini on. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as it comes down to it, I think the hobby holder is best for people who are, I don't know, it's comfortable to hold. So if you have like hand cramp problems, if you have like repetitive stress in your hands or pain in your hands or fibromyalgia or something like that, I could see how the hobby holder would be much nicer to hold because you can really kind of rest it in your hand gently. As long as you've got smaller hands, I think bigger hands, it might be a little bit too small, but then all painting things, I think, tend to be that way for people with big hands. Hold on, let me... There we go. Now we're in focus. No, I don't, Max, because I don't usually... If I've got a good holder to hold, I don't usually do this anymore. When I used to, I don't remember, I used to do the rest of the finger on top of the head thing. The bar is if you have that habit. If you've got that rest your finger on top of the head thing to brace, then you want to use the bar. But I've adapted to not doing that, and I rest my pinky on my index finger, and like if I don't have my index finger here, it feels weird to paint. So that means my finger is almost never up there, which means that I don't need the bar. The bar is necessary if you've got that habit. A lot of painters do, and I used to. I don't know when I broke it. I just did at some point. I adapted my my way of holding miniatures. But this is really good for the people who do like to work on bottle caps. Like, this thing is so valuable for that because you can just swap things in and out and work on different projects at once. And I knew a lot of people at Paint Club who used to use bottle caps for their miniatures. And so now they have something comfortable to hold that they can put the bottle cap on. So for me, that's a total win. And if you work on bottle caps, then do it. Yeah, that's what the bar is meant to do, Krios, because a lot of people with 28s, they'll get in that habit of kind of bracing and doing like this and paint like this, right? And that just rubs paint off the top of the model. And sometimes they'll brace on other parts of the model. You get in this habit of it. But it's a totally breakable habit. And for me, I just adjusted my stance at some point, probably because I kept rubbing paint off stuff. So I started making it kind of a conscious/subconscious effort not to do it. Like, if I would notice myself doing it, I would make myself stop, right? Until that got grained in and I just didn't do it anymore. I adjusted my grip and now I paint differently. So for huge models, I just use bubble wrap. So, I mean, I've got a block for things like, okay, Sphinxy got a medium block. Here's my blocks. Here's all my blocks. These are just Hobby Lobby specials. They're super cheap. And I liked them because I could give them away at Paint Club and not have a problem. Because they were only like, 25 cents each. So big block is like a 2-incher, and then we've got an 1.5 inches, and then we've got an inch. 28 millimeters go on the inch. Models like Sphinx go on this. Every once in a while, I have a model that's big enough to warrant this guy, the giant guy. But anything bigger than this is going to go just resting in bubble wrap in my hand. There comes a point where the holder is too large to comfortably be held by my hand, and then I just give up on it. Then I don't need a holder. Then my holder is bubble wrap. Soft bubble wrap. The kind you can really crunkle up. Really soft. Then you can wrap it around the model, and you won't rub paint off of it while you paint it. Alrighty, let's get some paint on. A lot of people have different grips, and it's just what's comfortable for your hand. It's how your fingers in particular scrunch up on the model. So, I mean, I got in the habit of resting my hands on each other because back in the beginning when I was learning, people said it would reduce shaking. So I just got in the habit of doing that. I also rest my hands on the edge of my desk, which is not great, but it works. You can use anything. I hate gloves, Durham, and they tend to irritate my skin. I have really sensitive skin. So I don't use gloves, but that's totally a doable thing. The thing that the bubble wrap gives you that gloves do not is it gives you that slight air cushion against the model. So it helps a little bit extra because just pressure on the model can sometimes rub paint off if it's a sharp edge. So I like the bubble wrap. Mostly because I detest gloves. But gloves can totally work. And I know a lot of people who do use gloves when they paint. All right, let's get this hair going. Let's get the braid going. How about that? So I'm going to get my dark, which is 2-2 Wilderness and Dungeon Slime. I'm going to thin it down a little bit because I want it to make a nice thin line. I may darken it just a little, but I think this is probably pretty dark. I tend to paint over the entire braid. Yeah. I mean, you can forget to use them just because you forget to use them or because they're not comfortable or whatever, If you really want to use them, the thing to do is to leave them out on your painting surface. And so they are the first thing that you see when you come to the painting table and you pick them up and put them on right away. Chibi. The way to establish a habit is to make it easy and accessible. That is one of the key factors of like successful habits. They are easy and accessible. This is why when you're trying to break yourself of eating a ton of chocolate, having the chocolate out on the counter where you can see it all the time is it works against you. And why you will not establish the chocolate habit, or you will have to actually exert willpower. Whereas if you put the chocolate away where you cannot easily access it, then the habit may actually have an easier time. So painting habits are the same way. Yeah, exactly. That's the other problem, right? Crows and bones is because some of those resins or styrenes can have really fragile bits, and so I'm just painting over this a bit. And I'm probably going to use glazes to tie it together at the end, but I want this to be pretty dark to start with. And the reason is when I go in and hit each of these braids, as you can see, I want it to really show up. So the shadow needs to be, this is the darkest tone probably in the hair. And this is about as dark a tone as you want in anything white, guys. This is kind of, let's actually look and see on the grayscale what this is, because this is key for painting white. Don't make your shadows too dark. So grayscale. Let's use our handy dandy grayscale friend. It's out. I'm betting a 5 or 4. It's about a 4. So if I look at it, see how you can see that the 5 is darker than the color, and you can see that the 3 is lighter than the color. But the 4, especially if you squint your eyes, you can kind of see that edge blending in. That means it's closest to a value 4. So you don't want to go darker than a 4 or maybe a 5 at most on your grayscale when you are shading white. A lot of people make the mistake going really dark, and that's where it fails. It tends to go gray then, or whatever color you're doing. You can eat fruit and chocolate if you want to, but when you're trying to lose weight, eating too much chocolate is the problem, guys. You can eat whatever you want in moderation, but for me, I have learned, sadly, and this is actually a thing that science has proven, is that once you've been overweight, you actually have to cut calories more than like people who have always been at a healthy weight. Like, and this is like the world against us, right? Like totally the universe is against us on this, but apparently your body has a greater like tolerance at that point for kind of like just, it gives you a cushion because it doesn't want to let go of the weight. It thinks you're perfectly okay. And so it'll, essentially you have to like eat even less to lose weight effectively, or, with any speed at all. You never want to go below 1,200 calories for a woman though. Not ever. But I do have to go down to like 1,400 a day to lose. And that means not a lot of chocolate, unless that's all I'm eating. Yeah. Yeah, I put it out of sight, out of mind, Shadow Raven. That's exactly it. Fruit is a good substitute. I have been working hard on substituting red grapes and cut up cantaloupe, which since I'm still on low carb. I don't eat a lot of it, but the diet program I'm on, Noom, lets you eat fruit. And fruit that has a lot of water in it tends to be pretty low calorie. So I can get a sweet thing that's also low calorie, which is nice. And I really do love grapes and cantaloupe, so I'm happy. So I'm just going in and real delicately just touching. I'm not trying to like, these are each just such little braid bits. I'm just touching each one just a couple times. And if you mess it up, just take your green, your dark green, and just paint over that one braid. You should be leaving your dark green in the cracks anyway. Bryce, I have really learned that for me, the key is out of sight, out of mind. Like it really is. Like, David leaves chocolate on the counter, and I have to fight to not eat it, just not to see it, and just pick a piece up and think, oh, it's only one piece. Although that's pretty good for your willpower. That's another technique, is the exposure technique, where you just essentially make yourself walk by it every day, and eventually you just don't care. So I've gotten a lot better about it, but really the thing for me, if one of my real kryptonites is around, is I gotta hide it. And not even hide it, just put it in a drawer, put it in a cupboard, put it in the pantry or something. Put it in, my painting drawer or whatever. Oh, I'm not a green apple fan. More for you. You got 2 Lysettes because hoarder. That's nice. Oh, you have two Romag and no Lysette. That's a bummer. Yeah, it can be a little, the promos can be a little confusing. All right, so let's go back and hit these little braid things. Now, one thing that you can do is as the braids, these braids are going to get some light, right? Because you can see that if you dropped a straight line from the light source onto the braid, it hits pretty well. It hits at a diagonal. It's not like directly on there, but it hits. So there would be highlight here. So we can take this top part of the braid all up to white. This part of the braid, and especially this lower part of the braid, we may want to darken down. I'm still going to do everything with the pure white. I'm going to hit every little braid. But then I may use glazes to tune what I've done. This also can be a little fraught with peril if you are working on a model where the braids aren't sculpted very clearly. Although most digital models these days, you're really good. You're just fine because the braid will be sculpted really nicely. Put it with the unpainted mini collection. You'll never find it again. Good point, Bryce. Good point. Oh, but I go through I've gotten to the point now where I'm going through my unpainted mini collection a lot. Because I'm really trying to thin it out. So my unpainted mini collection actually is quite small. I mean, compared with previous times in my life. But yeah, my big problem with like establishing habits and like working on stuff for myself is that I tend to take on too much. I bet a lot of you are the same. Where I'm like, I'm going to lose weight and finish editing my second novel. You know, I should be concentrating on one thing at a time, and instead I just keep loading stuff on. I have a very bad habit of doing that. Taking on too much. So see how just a little bit. And again, look at what I'm doing, guys. I'm angling the miniature and I'm moving my brush at the same angle I always move it in. So keep your brush at a comfortable angle. That's how you hit these fine details. That's how you get that fine motor control and muscle memory, is you just keep your brush consistent and move the model around so that you can always tackle the surface with the most comfort you can. And sometimes you just won't be able to get a very comfortable angle on a surface, and then you've got to mix it up. Actually, Zen, I've been going very heavily away from multitasking. I've really, science tells us it's really not effective, and I've noticed that in myself. Like, I tend to waste a lot more time if I'm multitasking, whereas if I just focus on something, I could get 2 tasks done in a lot less time. So, everybody varies again. Some people are much better at multitasking. I used to think I was good at multitasking until I really tried just focusing on one thing at a time. Also, it stresses me out a little bit to multitask, so I was like, in my eternal quest to stress less. I feel like that's like my eternal quest for my entire existence. I think that's most people's eternal quest, is stress less. See, that's why I try to give you all these tips and tricks so that you don't get frustrated with painting, because we need painting to keep us sane, guys. Yeah, Jabberwock. Good, you are seen. That's funny, Francis. I've done that. I've actually got a little, I love the Mochi, the little, there's a coconut ice cream Mochi brand that Sprouts puts out. The little ice cream with the bean paste around them. I love there's a coconut and, mango box. And I've hidden like 1 or 2 little Mochis at the bottom of the refrigerator so that I don't always see them. But if I see one and then I need a sweet at that time, then it's fair game. Yeah, 4 minis, that works. I mean, often, I can do a few at a time. It's nice to have something to switch to if you're having a problem with one mini, and David does this all the time. And he's kind of like gotten me around to that way of thinking, because I always used to try to just pressure through on whatever I was working on. But he will, if he's having a trouble with something, he'll put it where he can see it and think about it, but he'll start working on something else. Yeah, coconut ice cream Mochi, I like coconut ice cream. Like the coconut milk ice cream. I really love it. Although I did pick up, I forget the brand. It's like one of those new brands, and it uses milk that have the different, it's non-lactose milk. It's from the different breed of cow. There are a couple different proteins in milk, like, and different breeds of cows produce different ones. And so the protein in goat's milk isn't the same as the protein in our lactose cow milk. And these cows produce that kind of milk. So this is a weird ice cream, but it's pistachio cardamom, which is such a actually an Indian food kind of flavor combo. But I love it. It's so good. It's so, so good. I like coconut ones, Red Links. I can't multitask and watch me at the same time. Yeah, when I'm really paying attention to something online, I can't multitask on it either. Really need to just devote my attention to it. Oh, yeah, pistachio and cardamom. It's just it's such a good ice cream. I just can't even. It's definitely high calorie. It's a little lower sugar, too. They're trying to make a slightly healthier ice cream. So it still has sugar in it, but less. And I think it's got a little bit of stevia. It uses a combo. I think those are the most successful substitutes. Here, okay, so now we're going to turn the model upside down so I can get to these braids. While still keeping my brush at a comfortable angle. Yeah, A1 and A2 milk. It's not a fad necessarily, Pendrake. A1 is, I mean, a lot of people who are lactose intolerant will deal fine with A2 milk. So I wouldn't call it a fad. There's science behind it. I mean, it is a different kind of protein and people do react differently to it. So I hadn't ever seen it in ice cream before. One thing I have learned in my diet journey is that I should never be too quick to call something a fad. Like, at one time, gluten-free was a fad, but that, like, totally made my digestion so much better when I went to that. And then keto was a fad, right? But I lost 60 pounds on it, so... And I've mostly kept it off. Oh, that's good to know, Jabberwock. Aw. We don't want to depress you, Durham. Yeah, TJ's coconut creamer. Yep, and I use the So Delicious coconut creamer. So good. Yeah, I tried to go mostly non-dairy because I noticed I was having a little bit of lactose intolerance. So I can do small amounts of real dairy and certain things like dry cheeses that a lot of people who are lactose sensitive can tolerate better, But things like Dairy Queen, like the last time I went to Dairy Queen is when I noticed it because it was just too much and it really actually upset my stomach. Which is sad because my mom, like when we were kids, my mom's still going to Dairy Queen on Mother's Day. That's the Mother's Day treat. Because it's usually warm enough in Wisconsin that you can actually like go to Dairy Queen. So I grew up eating tasty Dairy Queen things, but now they're a little bit, they do not react well. There we go. So we've got our braid really nice and outlined. We've got it nice and detailed, but it's very monochromatic, right? It looks the same from top to bottom. So we do need to put some more highlights or shadows on it. So I'm going to look at it and kind of figure out what I want to do. And I think I do want it to be brighter up top. So when you have things, and actually I'm going to be putting out my video. I refilmed my video yesterday and I think it worked this time. So I'm going to be talking about this on my Patreon in a $2 video that's coming out probably today. But on the top parts of surfaces, you do not want your shadows as dark as they are on the middle or bottom part of your surface. And likewise, on the bottom part of your surface, you don't want your highlights to be as bright. So you still use highlights and shadows, guys, on all the parts of your figure, but you just shift them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to bring the upper part of this braid lighter by glazing it with white. That should still let us see some shadows, but it will raise those shadows up a notch. Yeah, Oreo Blizzard. I used to like the tropical blizzards. Those are my favorites. Actually, Shadow Raven, I'm going to argue with you just a little there. Because, I'll tell you what, the fad, because I'll give it to you. It was a big fad, and a lot of people aren't even sensitive to gluten. I'll give you that. But what it did is make gluten-free foods both better tasting and more widely available for those of us who do have a slight problem. Like... So essentially, that's the side effect, right? For those of us who actually do gain benefit from the fad, or the way of eating, I'm going to call it an eating style, actually. For those of us who do, when those things get popular, and it makes it so much easier for us to find the foods we need, like, then I can't say that it's a bad thing. Also, going gluten-free, honestly, isn't going to hurt anybody. I mean, it may not be something they need, but it isn't going to hurt. Yeah, gluten-free stuff has gotten tastier because there's more demand, right? So then companies started saying, hey, if we can make a better version of this, people will buy it, right? So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even though I used to like kind of look at vegan and raise my nose, but you know what? They're all just different eating styles. And for some people, that is the answer, right? That the one that makes them feel good, like, because that's so important. Just find an eating style that makes you feel good and don't care what anybody says about it. As long as you're getting your vitamins and minerals and you feel great and you're healthy, go for it. Yeah, exactly, Bryce. That's exactly my point. Right. I knew your wife was I had forgotten she was celiac. I knew she was gluten-free. But yeah, you get a lot more choices now, right? And that's always great. That makes you feel like a normal human. Like, the problem with chronic health issues is that you feel like a monster. Like, you feel like you can't do things that normal people do anymore. And you get that. Like, it can kind of get in your head. So when you go to the store and you feel like you have lots of options like you used to, even if they're different options, it helps with that. It helps you feel more normal. This is so easy not to feel normal when you've got bad stuff going on. I speak from experience. It's a big mental thing that you have to overcome somehow. And so all this stuff really helps. Oh boy, Merid Blue. I think Cyan is a little darker. I think Merid is a little lighter. I suspect Cyan has slightly better coverage. Merid may be a little bit warmer. It's the best I can do for you. I don't have Merid in front of me. Yes, I did. And I got the bust too, Bryce. I got the Morgana 75 and the Morgana bust, and I actually really like the bust. In fact, don't remind me about it. I don't need another project prepped and ready to start on my sideboard right now. Yeah, no problem, Cruz. Yeah, there's a lot of ignorance about gluten. It's true. It's true, Inara. And it's hard to get over that ignorance when it is a fad, right? Like, when people label it a fad, it's hard to reach people about it. That's why I say never quite make up your mind about that stuff. Like, you might feel inclined to label something a fad, but try to keep an open mind about it. Because it does help some people, probably. And the bottom line is, does it help somebody eat healthier and have a healthier, happier life? That's what the bottom line is. So, I mean, I've tried almost everything at this point. And some diets are definitely not very healthy for you, so beware if they tell you to, like, not eat vegetables, but... Or if they're trying to tell you a lot of supplements, beware about that too. Alright, so essentially I glazed. See how much lighter that is now? Now you can still see that there are shadows up there, but they're much lighter when you compare down here, right? So now down at the bottom here, what I want to do is glaze probably with my dark. What I'm going to do though is at first I'm going to pop these braids a little bit brighter with a little bit brighter white so that when I glaze over it, I don't lose my highlights. Fruits are debatable because they can, if you're diabetic or you're diabetic disposed, then they can spike your blood sugar. So you have to be careful with fruit. But you can get everything. You can get all the vitamins you get from fruit from vegetables. So that one, I could see it go either way. But yeah, if it tells you, oh, fruit is evil, yeah, that's a red flag. Any diet that tries to it's like painting techniques, okay? Painting fads, right? Because we've all seen the painting fads, right? So this is a fad, or that galaxy cloaks are a fad, or two-brush blending is a fad, or, there's all these different things, right? These different, everybody's trying to label sometimes people try to label a technique as their own special thing that they made up, right? And they try to sell it as like, this is the end all be all, this will solve your blending issues or whatever, right? It's people. It's what we do. And so always beware anything in life that claims to be the end all be all, and this is the secret thing you've been waiting for to make you awesome. The secret thing you've been waiting for to make you awesome is just to like commit to the things that make you feel awesome. Like, that's it. I do berries and I do red grapes because they're actually mostly water. So I can eat like 10 grapes and only eat 20 calories. Which is awesome. And they're so sweet. Like, it's true. It's like the only thing that's gonna make you be awesome is to commit to doing things that, you know, that make you feel and be awesome. Like, nothing is the secret solution. There's no secret solution. Whenever I see those clickbaits, I just kind of laugh. And the painting community does every once in a while. It's like, okay, so, and this is why the word fad, I think, is a kind of a bad way to put it. All right, so a couple of years ago, airbrushing became a fad. It was what everybody wanted to get into. It was becoming a lot more accessible. There were great painters using airbrushes finally on miniatures to really nice effect, right? And so airbrushing became a fad. But that doesn't mean that airbrush isn't a great tool. It just became super popular and people labeled it a fad. And so people and I used to think like this. I used to think the airbrush was cheating, and it's not. But people who are inclined to think that way then kind of devalued the airbrush a little bit, and because it was a fad. So I think fad is a really bad word. It tends to devalue the thing behind it, even if the thing behind it is useful, and usually it's useful for somebody. So beware of that word, guys. Beware of that word. Blending is like synchronized dancing. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Because everything else is dancing along, and then you get to that blorf, right? You eat more grapes than 10. Oh, they're really sweet. 10 grapes is good enough for me. Ooh, cotton candy grapes. Yum, yum. That's really interesting. I haven't seen those around. That's really weird. I'll look for them. Yeah, I'm not sure. I never saw those commercials, but then I don't watch TV. Yeah, but there's still people who would label that a fad, right? Right, Durham? Like, there's no question that airbrushes are useful. I used to be bad about this, too. I used to be bad when something would come out, like, when Confrontation and Rackham came out, NMM became a fad. And then, then for a while, True Metallics was where it was at, and so True Metallics became a fad, and then, this and that, the other thing. What I think is better than fad is styles. Styles, right? So it's like a style becomes in vogue, just like fashion, which is very much what it is suddenly, a couple of really good painters maybe, or a bunch of maybe the Games Workshop community, or, a large painting community will pick up on something and really push it and get some great results with it. And then everybody else will be like, they suddenly notice this thing because maybe it's something they didn't look at before, right? Because it wasn't really being talked about or publicized, or it wasn't in vogue. And so suddenly everybody is conscious of that, and everybody's trying it, right? And so then it can come off as a fad, but that doesn't mean it's not useful. So I think it's styles. Styles are better. Because you definitely could say eating style, right? Like low carb is a style of eating, that kind of thing. So it's the same thing. It's like everywhere now, like keto and paleo are like everywhere now, whereas when I was doing it, I found it, like when I was first doing it, it was not as widely talked about. All right, so I bumped up these highlights on the sprayed, and I'm going to glaze with a darker color to bring everything down near the bottom. But if I didn't first highlight these up nice and bright, when I put that glaze on, I'd lose them. So I need to watch that. Ha! Style. Patience. Is patience in style? I think patience is in style, but hard to attain. Patience will never be a fad because patience is hard. Things that are too hard don't become fads. Yeah, I've got his book, Kerniko. Yeah, and that's what Aaron does also, Lovejoy and Michael Proctor. That's how you that's how you work with an airbrush. You set everything up with the airbrush, but then for the fine detail, you still need to use brushwork. Like that's why Aaron will tell you, and did tell you actually, if you go back and watch kind of the interview with him a long time ago that I was on, when he came to Reaper right after his car accident. But he'll tell you in that, he says it flat out, the brushwork is not going away. Still work on your brushwork. An airbrush will never replace a brush. Like there's just some things you can do with one and some things you can do with the other. And the best way is the integration of both, right, in his book. Uh-oh. Last minute pause. Last minute panic. That's okay. My autocorrect strikes back too. Oh, RCL, yeah. RCL, exactly. Right. RCL is not good for patients. That's true. That's why you should always be working on one of your own projects, like maybe a project you're really trying to push yourself on the side. Wow, that's a lot. Auto corrupt. Yes. That's what it is. All right. I'm going to pop this over here. But yeah, I used to be really bad about like kind of turning my nose down, look down my nose at the airbrush. So there we glazed a bit darker there, guys. See? And I've really walked it back in like the last 5-10 years. I started walking it back probably about 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. When you really started to see airbrushes, like the narrow nozzles come more into vogue, and like the airbrushes could do finer detail, and I felt like there were people doing some really good work with it, you know, to set things up. It was really useful, so I essentially changed my mind. But yeah, I used to be really bad about calling airbrush cheating. I was a little close-minded in my younger painting days, I think. A little judgmental. I've tried to change myself over the years. Well, I hope with some success. Try to be more open-minded. That, you know, it may not work for me, but it could work for somebody. So that person, you know, give them the respect is due for what they do. Oh no. Yeah, taxes are wicked. Evil things. Even more evil now that I'm freelance and I have to pay extra ones. Alright, so now we've got a braid that is noticeably lighter at the top, kind of in the middle of the road down here, and darker at the bottom, but it still reads as a braid. So I may need to touch up my white a little bit on some of these real vertical surfaces. Like you may find that maybe you just want your shadows to be like at the very bottom, but I won't bring them up quite as bright so that it'll look more realistic. John's slogan was pretty good from the beginning. If you're not cheating, you're not painting. Although, and I don't know, I guess it depends on how, what you define as cheating. I think what I've done is undefine things as cheating, actually. I no longer consider airbrush cheating. I don't consider wet blending cheating. Like, I use fast techniques now that give me just as good results that I probably would have thought were a bit cheaty in the old days. So I'm going to bring up these highlights at the top of her head, and I'm going to do the same thing, guys. I'm going to actually glaze with white at the end of this so that I can take down some of this these extreme shadows up here. Or I'm just going to brush a thinned white across them, which I think I already did once, actually, on this one side. Yeah, right. Yeah, but there was definitely an anti-airbrush crowd back when it was starting to get popular again. It's not cheating, Max, but it's like there was a certain fashion to think of it that way because, you know, the way that some airbrush people were saying it was like the be all end all, like it was just your magical tool to do blending, so you didn't have to actually do blending anymore. But it's different. It's kind of like, and some people have this attitude also toward like digital art versus real art. I think digital artists fight a lot to get like real cred for what they do, because some people feel like it's not as much work because the computer does a lot of things for you. My brother, actually, he's an architect and I'm an artist, and we had a spirited discussion about this, but when they first started doing CGI in movies, in animated movies, he didn't like it because he felt like it wasn't like real art. And I was like, no, they still have to do a lot of stuff, you know, by hand. The computer can't do everything. But that's kind of the same thing with the airbrush. Well, yeah, Crows. I mean, there's a lot less of it now, and certainly there's almost none of it in the Reaper community because we've tried to stamp it out. You know, when you make a solid effort. But mini painting, I mean, it's like any community. People have strong opinions, and they'll argue about stuff. And their strong opinions aren't always, like, based in, you know, like, it's based on their personal likes and dislikes. And it's valid for them, you know. But yeah, this stuff is a thing. So if you run into this, it's just like the people in the historical community who feel like fantasy models suck because they feel like the quality isn't there. And they haven't looked, chances are, they haven't looked at anything recently. Or they're trying to compare apples and oranges between like a 120 millimeter figure and a 28. And it's a totally different style, so they think it's bad. For the most part, you won't run into that anymore, but there are still people out there who believe it. So don't be surprised when you run into these things. There are very opinionated people everywhere in the world, and that includes in our hobby. All right, so I'm starting to bring in the white here on the top of the head, too. Yeah, I mean, people love to, like, you know, just kind of, hey, dog father. Yeah, Crows. Well, I mean, so any hobby or profession or anything that you run into where people really care about what they do, which is most of them, you're going to run into this stuff. You're going to run into strong opinions and dissenting opinions, right? And you're going to run into people who like have a very polarized view of some aspect of the hobby, right? I mean, I even run into this with my dog club because dogs, of course, everybody loves their dogs like they love their kids. And so there's a lot of strong opinions and strong emotions tied in. So yeah, you're going to get in people who feel, you know, a certain way about something that maybe, you know, you're like, whoa, dude, or dudette. It's like people who feel like painting contests are all rigged. That's another one. There's a lot of these little things that kind of just weasel around at the edges of our hobby. So just be aware that even if something doesn't work for you, it may work for somebody else really well. That's all. Yeah, Durham, exactly. You'll run into that. Jazzy, I actually don't dry it out. This is key, actually, to getting good results, in my opinion, with my style. But I rinse it out, and then I just squeeze it out between my fingers, so you can see the water there. It points it up. Like, I used to, when I was younger, I used to be a brush licker, and then one of my friends got really sick, and they thought it might have been that. So that scared me away from brush licking, and I started doing this instead. So I just squeeze out, now it's habitual, I just do it without even thinking about it. But it means that there's still water in the brush, just very little, but it's enough to keep the paint a little wetter as I work with it. So I don't actually I believe that if you use a really dry brush with our paint, like, especially if you're using thin paint, because you want the paint to come off the brush really nicely, and so you need fluid in the brush. To keep the paint moving. And so I find that I get much better results if I have a little moisture in my brush. Oh, good, Coovs. You can do it. Just, you know what? No pressure. Just pick it up and do one thing. Paint some hair black. You know, whatever. Whatever model. Ask yourself, this is a good getting things done strategy. Ask yourself what the next step on the model is, and just do that. No pressure at all, just a tiny little, 5-10 minutes, just do your next step. If you sit down and you paint your next step, every day for 10 minutes, you'll have a finished model in actually not long, right? It's like they always tell you, like, if you're writing a book, just even if you only wrote 100 words a day, in 3 years, you'd have a finished novel. For not much effort. Little steps do matter. Yeah, it is too yellow for some people, Coops. It's very much like ogre skin was supposed to be mustard yellow back in, I think, the original D&D, and that's why Ron really likes that color for ogres. But the other thing you could do is work in a darker skin tone into it, or maybe mix a little bit of rich leather, something like that, to give it a little more brown. Even a little russet brown. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and then you get a more golden tone. That's, yep, exactly. Good idea. See, you were already there. I didn't even need to help you. That's probably true, Crows. Like, Reaper has made a very large effort, like, and those of us who are painters in the Reaper community who are teaching and talking in front of people about the hobby, we've made a very strong effort to not be exclusionary and to, like, just pretty much say if it works for you, do it. Because honestly, that's the way people get better at this hobby and they really enjoy the hobby. Like, you should do it the way you enjoy it. It'll work for you, right? Do it the way it works for you. Oh, good. Yay, I hope it works for you, Coops. You can always glaze with the ogre skin if you decide it's not quite yellow enough. If you want to, like, shift it. Or even glaze with a regular skin tone if you want to. I think his kobold scale is a pretty awesome color, actually. Durham, I don't know, but remember that non-toxic does not mean food grade. It's the best I can do. I was scared enough after my friend got sick that I just changed my behavior. And you know what? It's like now I don't even notice it. Like now if the brush like moves toward my mouth, I like kind of like go, ew, what am I doing? Like I catch myself. But I try to discourage people from licking brushes because it does build up, right? Like, sure, there might be only a little bit in your paint water, but how much of that is building up over time? Not to scare you or anything, just, you know. I mean, do you, but it's, that one I'm going to say, I became convinced it was not a very healthy habit, so I stopped. But I know a lot of people still brush lick, so... Mostly I just try to convince people that there is another way. All right, so really bringing in the white heavy on the top of the head. That's where the highlights are going to be. That's where we need it. But see, my shadows are still really dark up here. So I have to ask myself, like some of these locks of hair are pretty thick. So I could technically have some of these highlights, but I probably should knock them down a little bit so that the top of the head looks lighter. So... Oh, bacteria all over your brush, yeah. Big thank you. Bug thank you. No, I'm not Bug Lips. I'm not actually touching it. Like, I'm resting my pinky actually here on my fingers, Jazzy. So when I paint, I'm doing this. And I don't think I ever really touch the model. Mostly I'm resting here. I need to get my good angle. As long as I can achieve my good angle. And if I am up here on here, I'm usually touching the poster putty. Very rarely that I touch the model. I mean, I might, but I'm not seeing any paint rub off, so... I don't know, now I'll pay attention to it. Yeah, but mostly I'm cradling the model, and where my fingers are is just like, where do I need to have a good platform? And now I'm curling my pinky, see? Because I need to get up higher, so I'm stacking my hand to get up higher. And these are things that you just like kind of get used to as you paint the model, right? You'll get kind of a style of painting. David does a really weird, like kind of curls his hand all the way around the model, which looks really weird to me because I paint this way, but my style looks really weird to him. So everybody holds it different. Yeah, you may have like a lot of if your skin has like a higher pH, more acidic pH, you can actually do that. Like some people are really acidic. Not to say anything about you, Zen. I'm sure you're super sweet. But it does happen. And Kevin Williams, our staff sculptor, was always like that. He refused to touch any model I had, even if he really wanted to take a closer look at it, because he knew his fingers were more acidic and he didn't want to rub paint off. He's like, my fingers are poison for miniatures. No, don't do it, Twendrake. Don't do it. Man, there are so many rumors already. People always like to feel like they're in the know. And so they'll grab onto a thing and it might not be a real thing. But maybe it is. I know. Just be critical in your thinking, I guess. All right, so I'm going to put a glaze of white up here on the top. I'm going to take these really dark folds down, or creases down here. And this is just a spot glaze, so I'm putting it on real thin. I'm not letting it puddle or pool. There are two ways to put on glazes, and one is this way. If you're just using a little bit of paint on your brush, you can just brush it over the surface. And this lets you quickly build up a lot of layers of glaze, depending on what you're looking for. So see how I've really taken that down. Now I can still see shadows. I can still see that there are locks up here, but it's a lot more integrated, right? It's a lot more light. There. Let's get this side of the hair. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to kind of do this similar to how I did the braid. There's also a back side of the braid that I need to catch right there that I didn't catch on the first go. So I'm going to hit everything. And my white is thinned. Like, it's at this point, it's got a fair amount of body. I'm going to keep going. The other way to paint this hair would be to paint it like it's cloth, which is something that I recommend if you're just starting to paint hair, rather than paint all these strands like I'm doing. So let's actually do that just for fun. Let's take our white and say, okay, so where the hair kind of bulges out here, it's going to catch the light. So we're going to paint it as if it's cloth. So we're going to do this all over the place. This helps a lot when you are trying to figure out the whole surface control thing, where it's like, to be white, you know, 70% of the hair or 75% of the hair should look white or almost white. And so if you're like, you have a hard time gauging that, if you're painting every strand, but here you can block in a huge swath of white, and so you know that your hair is going to start looking white. You guys are tormenting Bug Lips. And he torments you probably on a regular basis, so I guess, you know, you can. If you want to. I just feel bad. Probably shouldn't feel bad for goblins. There we go. So, kind of paint it like it's cloth. Get it to where you're like, all right, all of this is lighter. Then you go back in with your shadows and bring in kind of some of this stuff that you're seeing up here. Right, if you dish it, you should take it. That's true. Zen, that's true. We do let him get away with a lot, so, you know. Let's do a stretch break, actually, before I go and add shadows to the hair here. We'll put our Lysette out here. I need to get the strands out on the front of her face, too. Sit and stay, Lysette. There we go. Let's get her in focus so y'all can stare at her while we stretch. But yeah. Oh, dear me. It's Wednesday. We're going into San Francisco this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to go eat at a restaurant that we saw on the chef show. We're going to go Tartine for lunch. Stretch, everybody. If you haven't stretched for an hour, please stretch with me. Stretch out your shoulders, especially in your back. I don't know what I'm at, Zeke. I mean, it got you more steps, but I think that cupcake is going to alleviate any benefit. Ah. Is it a tasty cupcake? What flavor is it? Stretching. But yeah, getting up and moving when you're at the office is always beneficial. Chocolate with cream cheese icing. Wow. Chocolate frosting is my Achilles heel. Like the chocolate frosting they put on the Boston cream donuts. Yeah, those are hard to resist. That gets me. All right, I'm gonna go and do my floor exercises. I'll be right back, and we will resume. Alrighty. Whee! Ah. I'm trying to decide whether to use knoll hide on my actual knoll bust. It is so green. I was more likely to use a dark green mixed with some ochres and stuff, I think. So maybe Ron did fail in most of his humanoid skin tones. Alright, let's get some of this hair at the front of her head kind of highlighted. And again, you could go like all white through here. Down here, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the braid, where I'm going to highlight it up white, but then I'm going to probably glaze it with the green to make it darker. So that I still have highlights and shadows, but they're darker. So I'm almost underpainting. Even though it is white hair, it almost counts as underpainting at that point. But as I block in more and more of this white, the hair looks closer and closer to white. And I need to watch some of these little areas that can get really dark. Just kind of make sure I bring those up a little bit. Yes, did you take the stairs? Yes, it's good. Oh, hydrate. Yep, I forgot my hydrate. There we go. All right. Now, one thing I do like with this hobby holder is that I can hold it out more. So I could actually do this under the camera and not have my fingers all over the frame, which is nice. That's the nice thing about the hobby holder. Let me get this. Yeah, staff is often, I do weapons last, because if I'm going to put an accent color somewhere, chances are that's where it's going to go. And I still haven't decided really if I want this yellow in here. So there might be, I might put an accent color in here instead. That's why I'm just kind of ignoring the midriff right now with the laces. So when I figure out an accent color, I'll try to put it probably on the sword somewhere, probably on the flower, probably on the crystal, probably on the wraps here. And then we'll see where else. It depends on where I think I need it. This is the time to kind of think a little bit about accent colors and where you might put them. If you don't want everything to be green and yellow and white, this is very, very analogous color scheme right now. Really, really analogous color scheme. And the thing that saves it is that it is dark and light, right? I talked about that color composition. We talked about that a lot. Because if you're going to go analogous, like if you're going to go red, orange, and orange on a model, you really need to make one of those really dark, much darker than the others, and one of those lighter, and one of them kind of in the middle. So we have two lighter things here with the white and the yellow, but we do have this nice dark green, and the skin tone is dark. So we've got enough contrast. And that's the thing. You could go orange, you could go purple, you could go pink, you could go purpley pink, you could go probably kind of an indigo blue. You've got tons of different choices. But orange is not the color I would choose right off the bat because her skin tone is... browns are usually muted oranges, but this brown is very golden. So orange would be very close to the yellow. Like, if it was more green, like if the dress was this dark green, orange would make a lot of sense. And if you look at Derek's first take on the original Lysette, he's using kind of a sage green with orange and some purple. And that's a great color combo, but we've shifted things here. We're not doing like a green, orange, purple color scheme. Because the skin is so golden, it's more of a yellow than an orange. And then we've got the yellow dress, and then we've got the green. So we're stuck in the yellow and green cycle right now. So I could go reddish orange. Maybe it would work a little bit better, like a coral if I was gonna go orange, but I'm not sold on orange. So you probably could make one pretty easy. Yeah, I like pill bottles a lot, Shadow Raven. I'm with you there. Like, I still have one of my bigger miniature holders is still one of my veterinary bottles filled with like part of an old model, of the base of an old model, I think, that I didn't use because I built a different base for it, but it was a huge metal chunk. It was one of those old historical figures that had a huge metal chunky rock as a base. And I just put that inside my giant pill bottle. I think pill bottles are really good. I mean, they're free. And you can fill them with weighted stuff so that it's the right weight for you, right? Because some people can't hold a really heavy holder, but some people like a lot of weight. Like, this is a very heavy one. Like, it's heavy with that big chunk of basing rock in it. So, but the nice thing about that is it ain't gonna fall over. Yeah, exactly, Nemedzi. Well, that's why I got the wooden blocks. The blocks were easy because I didn't have that many pill bottles and felt a little weird giving those out at Paint Club. But the little wooden blocks were good enough, right, for something. If a new painter just had never encountered the whole put it on a holder before. So I guess it depends on where you are. I would still bring the blocks to places like Paint Club where I could just give them to people who are new to the hobby. But yeah, I like pill bottles. I use a lot of pill bottles. The rounded shape is easier to hold than the block. I'll give it that. Although the nice thing about the block, and I bring this up in my little Tiny Tips video, is that you can lay the model down. Like, it means you can... This is not a heavy enough block, and she's a metal model. But if this was a bones, I could just set it down, and the model would be suspended in air, and so it wouldn't scrape off. Metal models are weightier, and so that's a little bit different, but... Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's good, Quindy, because, you know, it's like everybody's hand is different. The size of the hand is different, so. Yeah, right. Use what works for you. I've never tried a craft paint bottle just because I've never owned craft paints. Although I think the hobby holder is similar in roundness. It's maybe a little bit wider. Alright, so I'm going to grab some of this green, and I'm going to reintroduce some of my locks of hair to this area I've painted. Yeah, ogres, they can sometimes fit on like a big block, or you can use the bubble wrap trick that I use. Alright, so thinned down my green, and I'm going to start kind of reintroducing it a little bit over parts of this white to see how I'm reintroducing those locks. The locks of hair. Separate them out now. And the nice thing is, since you're painting this green over white, it's going to be a little lighter than it was originally in the hair. Which is good because that makes it easy to blend. You can build up a little bit more at either end of the strand that you're drawing to make it look more cohesive. Blend in better. And where we've got a nice deep area, gonna bring that in a bit. Just bringing in, again, just a little bit of suggestion. See how this is lighter, though, in color than, like, some of the original dark. And I'm probably going to bring this up a little bit with a glaze because this part of the hair would still have light falling on it. It does kind of tuck in a little bit there because it's behind the head and you get that little indentation, but yeah. If I was getting the pirate ship, I'd paint it with real paint. I don't use craft paint. I don't like how it works. I don't like how it covers or doesn't. I tend not to like the finish, but that's just me. Like, I think that, if you like thin your base coat or if you're airbrushing, you could use Master Series for it. I use Master Series to paint terrain, so. But that's just me. Craft paint's gotten a little better. Some of it over the years. But they still don't use a lot of pigment in it, because if they did, you'd be paying a lot more for it. So thinning it is, like, not going to happen. The biggest thing, though, I think, Pendrake, is just that I know the colors with Master Series, so it's like, I know exactly what color I would use, or colors I would use to paint the pirate ship to make it look like an old boat. And so I just wouldn't want to mess around with other paint colors. Figuring out what color in craft paint was closest to that. Besides, I'm going to be painting that boat. If I had ordered it, I would be painting that boat so freaking slow that I probably would still take me a while to run through my first bottle of paint. Yeah, an airbrush is an ideal tool for anything that big. Maldricar, base coating Maldricar comes to mind. I'm going to come in with this, get this a little bit brightened up here, under her ear. You can do a little wet blending too if you want, but I tend to glaze when it comes to hair so I can tune it. So look at how much brighter the hair looks. It now looks like it is white, even though we haven't done this part. But up here, it definitely looks like it's white because we've covered a lot of the surface in white. Oh, the matte ones? Yeah, I mean, Golden's decent. They're actually not a craft paint. They're a I would say a student grade artist brand. So they're not bad. They're perfectly serviceable. And yeah, now that they're doing them, and Liquitex are they're kind of the same kind of classification, and where they're like a good student grade paint. And the new matte ones, both companies I think have matte fluid acrylics now, so. Yeah, I don't know what I'd paint the pirate ship. I like it. It didn't like, there was nothing I would use it for, and I live in a small apartment, so. There we go. So we got that coming up. Well, I used to want one of those gigantic boats that I think Andrea puts out. Like, they put out a Viking ship that's really, really big. And I always wanted that, like, one of those. So it's not like I'm immune to big boats, but the Viking ship appealed to me more than more than the pirate ship. So now we're just bringing the white back in stronger on top of these strands. And I'm using the side of my brush for some of this and the tip of my brush for other parts of it. But now we're definitely having white hair. Yeah, I like big boats, but only like historical, elderly big boats. Yeah, I mean, they're not bad paint. They're just, the only thing to be aware of with artist paint is that usually they are not, they don't stick to the model quite as well as the paint that we utilize for miniatures. Usually. Just because it's meant for canvas or for illustration board, it's not meant for a 3D model that's primed necessarily. But I don't know, you're working over gesso, so maybe it's fine. I just found that they weren't quite as durable back in the day, but I haven't tried the new ones. There we go. Ha! Valendar, you're funny. That'll give you a very vibrant, very really saturated, not like an old boat at all, Max. Just be aware. Those are great colors for like, I think they're almost better for leather, but it would just like be like it would be like you put a varnish, like a really rich varnish on your boat if you use those colors. So the colors that I would likely use in Master Series to get it that old boat look would be wood stain, driftwood, and shield. And I might use walnut mixed in with my shield instead of using wood stain. Depending on if I was going to do a wash. If I was going to do a wash, wood stain is really good because it's got a translucency to it. Yeah, well, Katie and I took a cruise right before I moved out to California. I don't know, I don't like them as much as I used to. We went on cruises when I was a kid and it was very fancy, and now it's more, it's just not as. And I think I miss that fanciness. It's still nice when you get on the boat and it carries you around to all sorts of different places. Thought about trying to cruise on like the Mediterranean sometime if I could save up the money. There. Yeah, that's cool. Driftwood and Heartwood are good colors. Hey, you can use other paint lines. I don't care. I'm not gonna, like, yell at you for it. The only time I will chide you mildly is if you use other paints and then you complain that they're not, like, layering very well or glazing very well or, then I'm gonna look at you and raise my eyebrows and go, Master Series. But, otherwise, use what you like. Especially for a big project like that, I will not begrudge anyone using something else if it works for you better. Remember, in Reaper, we just want you to stay in the hobby. We are confident in the quality of our stuff, and we know that, you'll enjoy our products, so but we also know that we don't make everything. So we've got a little bit of a shadow there still. There. Yeah, pretty much, Nometzik. Hey, I'm human. I try to be a very, very, very good Anne. And most of the time. But sometimes a little bit of snark does sneak in. Hi, Otter. It's good to see you. Hey, Family Fantasy RPG. Hello. We're painting white hair today. I am working on our wood elf version of Lysette. It's one of the Bones USA models, so she has really nice detail. She's a plastic. So yeah, we decided to go light hair because of her skin tone being dark. Alrighty. I don't know what you've got, Thormel, so I don't know what you need. Like, what do you feel like you might need more of? You grab some white again, and again I'm going to bring up this even more. When your white is thinned, you can build it up and build it up and build it up until it's really bright. You might think it's really bright, like out the gate, but then if you layer more and more layers up there, you can actually use it to pop. See, look at the difference between that side of the hair and this side of the hair now. Yellows, greens, and oranges. Well, you can't go wrong with Wilderness and Dungeon Slime for these. For oranges, I recommend Sunrise, and if you're doing highlights on leather, I highly recommend Orange Brown 9201. If you are using a darker, richer brown, you can mix that in to make really nice highlights on leather, dark brown leather. Ruddy leather if you don't own it, 9109. It's a really good red brown also for leather, but also could use it for like a reddish brown hare or horse or fox or whatever if you don't want to go really bright red. And yellows, you all know I like Lantern, Candlelight, Clear Yellow if you want something a little greenish, Lemon Yellow if you want a yellow to mix into your greens to highlight them. Candlelight does the same for oranges. Just got to get a little bit of the hair on the inside there done, but I'm keeping it darker. Likewise, I need to paint the hair over here, and I'm using our green, our shadow, to paint the hair on the inside here. Not going white right up against the face there. Just need to give it a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit lighter on this side because this is a little bit more facing the light. Once again, be conscious of how you hold the brush. Try to hold it in a comfortable way if you're trying to hit these little details on the insides of things. There. There we go. Yeah, lemon yellow is pretty. I mean, we're using it for some of these highlights, right? So her dress is definitely looking yellow lately, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to keep working on it in future streams until I really, really have it well. I've got to do all the back of it, of course. We're still kind of at a yellow-green there. But putting the dark green on here definitely made the dress look more yellow, so. Alrighty, so we've got just a few more minutes left. Guess I'll go back here and just kind of block in. So let's use our trick to just paint this like cloth again. And all on the top, we're going to paint it white. Including in the cracks. There. Okay, so we've got this looking pretty good at this point. I need to bring this, bring these little strands a little bit more. I do want a little bit of white down here, but again, we're going to be keeping it a duller white and not a sharper white like on the top of this. Sailing the Seas of Cheese. I remember that album. I had a friend I worked with at Gen Con who loved that album from Primus. There we go. Now I am lacking a little bit of shadows up on top of everything. So I do need to put in my kind of my green to separate the strands out like I did back here, because up here on top it's pretty flat. So we'll just bring in a little bit of that. To separate out some of these strands. There would be a shadow probably under her arm here, so we'll bring in that. Now I've gotten it a little bit too green up there though, so I'm going to bring my white back in. And you may find yourself going back and forth here, especially when you're dealing with an area that part of it is heavily in shadow and you may feel like you're just losing your white. You may find that you need to pick it up and make it a little more harsh in other areas, like there. Yeah, it's definitely possible to get choice paralysis there when you've got a model and you can, it's like dragons. You can paint them any color or combination. And they're so big, so you don't want to make the wrong choice out the gate, because then you're stuck with it. Or you're going to repaint it, and it's huge. You don't want to repaint it. So I totally get it. All right, so that looks white. There we are. It's a little bit messy still. I could do some glazes to smooth it out. Can continue making my white a little brighter on some of these strands. Now I am paying attention to individual strands. We're no longer painting it like cloth. When you get to your highlight stages, you are going to do that. And since this hair is pretty well sculpted, you don't really need to like suggest extra strands. It's actually nicely done. I think I'm going to glaze a little bit of white over that braid, the back of that braid. Yeah, have fun with Lunch Shadow Raven. I hope you enjoy it. Glaze that in. Spot glaze. There we are. A little bit better. Choice is a good problem to have until it's not. Too much choice is definitely can be a problem. All right, so I'm intensifying the white back here. Can you see it? See how it's not as intense up here? I do need to shade this a bit more, but first I want to highlight it and then put a glaze over it so I can see my strands. And then we'll call this. So let me just get this last little bit on. Grab some of my shadowy color, green. Just kind of paint it over the bottom there. Might have to do a couple coats to build it up a little bit so that you can see that it's a shadow. You can see it now as it dries. It dries a little darker, see? And we'll get a little bit more. And put it over the very bottom. Again, you don't want it to pool. Yeah, that's a good idea. Photoshop some test colors, or maybe just do a section, like, you know, on a piece of paper, just kind of draw out a section and paint over it. There we go. We darkened down that bit down here. We kept most of the area white, so her hair is still reading as white or close to it. And yeah, she's looking pretty good on the front. I don't have this done yet. Keep the underside of the hair pretty dark. Life coach. Durham is our life coach now. To be very afraid, Durham. Alrighty. Got that white solidified there. White hair. Need a little bit more bringing that area up. Remember to minimize your green. If you keep a lot of it, you can still make this area look darker just by not taking it up with as much white. But you need the hair to look white, so you do need to bring it up a little bit. There we are. I think we're good. It's at least good to... I might have to touch it up at some point, but it's a good start. It's a good start. Doing hair well can take quite a long time. You block it in, you refine it, you glaze it, you adjust it. Maybe you adjust it again. Maybe you do a lot. I do a lot of fine work to get hair to look really good. Like, I find that I do a lot of repeated glazing and smoothing and touch-ups and re-highlights and a bunch of stuff. So, if you want hair to look really, really good, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time thinking about highlights and how it falls, and you may have to do quite a bit. That's not... my bust there is only like half done. Like, it needs a lot more work to look as good as I think it can look, so... Yeah, I was reaching for my bust. All right, guys, I think we're good. What we did today is we talked a lot about white hair and making it look white. We talked about tackling braids and how we use glazing to kind of define portions of the hair that may be lighter or darker. We talked a lot about, unjudging. Yay! And how airbrushes are not a fad. They're a style. Got it? Yeah, so we talked a lot about food and diets, and it's not a fad, it's a style. Even if it doesn't work for you, it may work for someone else. Because, life coaching. Hashtag life coaching here on Reaper Pro-Tips. Not. All right, so tomorrow, on Thursday, we are back to the genie, and we will probably, since I green stuffed her, we'll probably... work a bit more on the hair. We're going to work a bit more maybe on the smoke as well, I think. I think that's what we'll do. So that is where we are at. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. As always, I enjoy your company. And I hope that you all have a lovely, lovely Wednesday. And yeah, those of you, I do have a Patreon. I mentioned it earlier, but I didn't really plug it. So I'll have my video up on the Patreon later today about highlighting and shading using a slightly different style. And go and check it out. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. And yeah, there we go. I don't think so. I did half work, Wyvern. Wyvern was Monday. Half work was Tuesday. Sphinx... No, wait. The other way. Half work was Monday. Sphinx was Tuesday. Lysette is Wednesday. We're back to Genie. I have them in order they're in a conga line up on my shelf. So yeah, so there you go. Thanks everybody, and I will talk to you later. Who are we rating, Reaper? I can't put up my screen until we have a rate up. Sky Daddy, yay! Yay for Sky. All right, guys, have fun. Oh yeah, it's Lucas' stream this afternoon. Do remember, you don't want to miss the Alpaca Brigade, and I will talk to you guys all later. Bye bye.